Well, hi there, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Real Estate Investing. I'm your host, Sharon Vornholt, and I'm so glad you're tuning in today. My guest is Laura Lenington, and we're going to dive into a topic that is near and dear to my heart, and that is how to talk to motivated sellers. This is something that a lot of people have a problem with. Laura has been a full-time real estate investor since 2014. Prior to that, she was an active duty soldier in the U.S. Army, who then worked for the Department of Defense as a civilian employee. Yeah, I'm going to start this over. I totally mucked that up.
Okay, no problem.
Let's do that. Cut this front out. Well, hi there, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Real Estate Investing. I'm your host, Sharon Vornholt, and I'm so glad you're tuning in today. My guest is Laura Lenington, and we're going to dive into how to talk to motivated sellers, which is one of my favorite topics. Laura has been a full-time real estate investor since 2014. Prior to that, she was an active duty soldier in the U.S. Army, who then worked for the Department of Defense as a civilian employee. Since getting started in 2014, Laura has focused on wholesaling off-market properties. She has also completed a full rehab of a single-family home. She holds a small rental portfolio and has done a few hotel flips, just to mention a few things. This year, Laura has also been focused on expanding her rental portfolio with multifamily units of 8 doors or more, and she's getting ready to close on an 11-unit building with seller financing. So that's an interesting thing to talk about. Welcome to the show, Laura.
Thank you so much, Sharon. I'm really excited to be here. As I've told you before, but I'll speak it out to your audience here. When I first got started in real estate investing, you're one of the voices that I heard a lot. And I really heard you as a strong female voice in this space. And, you really planted a lot of seeds of encouragement within me. So it's just really an honor and an excitement to be here with you. I could have never imagined back in 2014, 15, 16 that I'd be able to be on this with you today. So it's exciting.
Well, I'm excited to have you. I'm always excited when I find women that are in the space and are willing to come on the show and talk about how they got here. So let me ask you this. What made you choose real estate investing as a second career after your military career?
Yeah, great question. So my military career as a soldier and then a civilian, it just felt like I had like two drastic ends to it. I was either like bored out of my mind, kind of sitting in a cubicle, not enough to do or very mundane bureaucratic things to do. Or the only other way it would occur for me would be I was like dodging bullets and, working like crazy hours on very little sleep, in dangerous places. So after so many years of that, I kind of got tired of the boredom going over to like extreme working environments and things like that. And I thought there's gotta be something in the middle that I can actually sustain for like the rest of my life, Yeah. So what I was really starting to look for right before I made the transition into real estate, I was looking for something that was basically going to really keep my attention, be something that was challenging. I do like things that are challenging. And it was going to be something that kept me like up and away from a desk at least some of the time. So Sharon, as well as I do, we're not away from our desk all the time in real estate, but there is quite a bit of getting out and talking to people, getting out and solving problems, looking at properties, things like that. So to me, it really seemed like something that would marry up like my abilities, with paperwork, my abilities with organization and like bureaucratic processes and tracking, projects and being out with people, actually listening to people. I love meeting strangers. I love, having conversations with people about, how I can help them and add value. And so real estate really stood out to me as a way to do that.
Well, I think it's interesting that you talk about bureaucratic processes and paperwork and things like that, because I've met quite a few former military real estate investors. And by and large, they are some of the most organized people when it comes to this of all. They have everything is process oriented, system oriented. They know their numbers. It's a skill set that they seem to, maybe not everybody develops it, but these people have developed that skill set. and they are very schedule focused too. They can get more things done in a day than the average person. So I think it serves real estate investors well that come into this business with that background.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned I worked for the Department of Defense as a civilian. That was what I was doing right before I went into real estate. And I actually worked for the Defense Contract Management Agency. So, what that agency does is provide oversight to government contractors. And that is just full of just details and contracts and negotiations and, monitoring the parties within, these deals that the government's making with contractors, monitoring the parties and their performance within the contract. So that just related so well to real estate. I wasn't afraid to write a contract or dig into a contract and find out what it really said and craft it. That's the other thing. I wasn't afraid to craft a document to make sure it reflected exactly what I was trying to do.
Yeah, that's a skill that will serve you well. Now, that Department of Defense job just sounds like the epitome of shoot me now. It's like, okay, I don't know about that one.
Well, and then that position led me over to 9 months in Afghanistan, where I was really boots on the ground in real time, monitoring contracts and helping solve problems for contractors who provided really important services in like a real-time environment. And that was really cool. But like I said, then I was in this environment, I was away from home. We really didn't have days off. You never knew if you were going to be in a bunker overnight. So the exciting part always came with that essence of, it wasn't really an off switch. You were either full throttle in it, or you were at the desk doing the mundane, like kind of shoot me now types of things, that's like what I said before. Real estate was just like this really cool middle ground where I could get up and get out.
Really easy compared to that.
Well, so I thought,
So did you start out with wholesaling?
No, not really. When I went into real estate, so I bought my first rental property right before I left my 9 to 5. Didn't know what I was doing. I bought it from a family member. Like, I totally don't regret it. I still own it. Paid market value. Didn't really dig into numbers. I just bought it because I could.
Yeah.
And it was such a rush, and I really enjoyed it. And I was like, I could just do this over and over and over. And I thought, I really think I could just flip a house. Like, I could just figure it out, And so the very first thing I did was go ahead and I had like savings and things like that to live off of. So I went ahead. I was quite honestly just going through some personally miserable time and just really wanted a change. And I just really wasn't scared to take the leap. So I took the leap and I left my job, which, I often hear people do not recommend that path. And I don't necessarily recommend that path, but that is what I did. And I bought a house right away from another local investor who wholesaled it to me. I didn't negotiate, which now I just look back on it. I'm just like, what was I doing? I just fully trusted him. Now I look back and I'm like, I could have got that house for so much less. But I bought a rehab. I was basically I just was general contractor basically for it with no experience, hired all my people. I was out there every day overseeing the project, and it got done, and I did a fairly good job. I mean, the house definitely looked good at the end of the day. I didn't overdo it for the neighborhood. But there were just a lot of challenges and things that came with that rehab. And at the end of the day, I ended up basically breaking even. And in like my memories, it doesn't feel like I broke even because I stressed about it so much, right? So it was also just an amazing learning experience. I figured out what I thought I was going to love to do in this business. I did not love to do it. And that was rehabbing. So while I was waiting for that rehab to finish up and sell, I was going to real estate investor association, meetups. I was starting to meet people. I started to learn about this thing called wholesaling. And when I first heard about it, I was like, wow, wholesaling is not for me. Like, I would just never do that. It just sounded salesy. It just wasn't what I left my job to go do. In my mind at the time, it was not that. And at the same time, the market wasn't like it is now back then. Things took a little bit more time to sell. So I had a few months while I was waiting for this house to sell. And I was like, I wish I could just supplement my income, with like little fast things while I wait for this to get my money out and go do something else. And wholesaling started I started listening a little bit harder to it. And my whole mindset around it changed one time when I was talking to a successful investor in my area. And I just said something to the effect of, wholesaling is just not for me. I would never wholesale. I'm this kind of investor. And this person said to me, they said, Laura, like any smart, successful investor would also be a wholesaler.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what he meant was, why would a deal ever come across your desk that doesn't fit whatever your main strategy is? Why would you still not put that deal under contract, add value to the seller's situation, and wholesale it for a fee? Like what investor wouldn't do that? And in an instant, my whole mindset around wholesaling changed. Like, this isn't like a beginner's thing. This isn't like a young person only thing. This isn't someone without money only thing. And it really hit me like, ooh, wholesaling is just an investment strategy. It's just a strategy you can put into your business, no matter who you are or what you're doing. And it let me look at it with a brand new set of eyes.
It's so funny that you say that, because I had the same mindset around it. In fact, I was rehabbing and doing buy and holds, and I just could not wrap my brain around the whole idea of wholesaling. It was the weirdest thing. And I went for 10 years and didn't wholesale a house until 2008 came. Wow. And then it was like, okay, I've got these properties. I had 2 of them. And my intent was to rehab them, but no one could get a retail mortgage. It was a first-time buyer market type of property, and a first-time home buyer, and they were not going to be able to get a mortgage. And I thought, okay, well, that's same thing. I just need to generate some cash till I decide what I'm going to do. And having been in the business for 10 years, it was easy for me to call an investor and go, hey, do you want to buy these properties? They went, sure. And I thought, boy, that was easy. Why would I I never broke even on one, but one of my very first rehabs, the realtor made more money than I did. We were like 3,000 and 2,500. And that was like, I tried to look at the positive side of it and say, I've never lost money, but darn, that was painful to put that time in. And I didn't know what I didn't know on that one too. Like, I didn't know that, he was going to eat into my profit by saying, well, the seller always pays all the closing costs for the buyer and things like that. But you can't know everything that you don't know. And you just have to go, okay, that was a painful college lesson, but okay, I'll move on from there. Yeah. But so no matter what your strategy, you need to be able to talk to motivated sellers. And I think this is the thing that people need to really get. It doesn't matter if you're a rehabber, if you're a buy and hold landlord, if you're a wholesaler, if you're a creative finance person, you need to be able to quickly get up to speed on talking to sellers, on building rapport, because anybody can talk to a seller and totally muck up the conversation. But learning how to build rapport with these sellers, you and I talked a little bit before the show. People are not all born with this skill. In fact, I would go so far as to say most people, they're not born with this skill. I know a few that could do it. But in general, it's a skill you hone. It's a skill you need, but it is the skill other than marketing that will make you the most money on the planet. So how do you do that? How did you approach this process? Because I do know a lot of people that send out direct mail. They spend a lot of money on direct mail, and then they don't want to answer the phone because they have to talk to sellers. So let's talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you're so right about, and I've gone through periods of time too, where my phone's ringing off the hook with responses from direct mail, and I get even recently I found myself overwhelmed from like a time constraint standpoint, and so, but what you're really asking about is just how to have these conversations with motivated sellers. And so let me start out by saying, like, the key here. So I'm trying to think of what someone who's listening to this right now, who's in the middle of all this, maybe sort of be within their first, 6 months or a year or whatever. Like, the key here is you're spending your time with the motivated sellers. I see so many people trying to make every incoming call a deal. And it's just like, you will save yourself a lot of heartache and just also a lot of time, just a lot of like irritation and frustration when you really start to be able to listen for who is actually motivated here, who is a fit for me. And so the mantra I use to make sure that I'm spending my time talking to the people that I can best help is I'm looking for the people who are looking for me. Okay. So if you're constantly doing that, then you're going to find yourself spending time in the conversations with the right people. So that's number one. Not every phone call or every person that calls into you is going to be a fit, and just be ready to be okay with that. So once you're talking to a motivated seller, the next type of like mindset mantra I try to remind myself is, because sometimes it's like, okay, we got a fish on the line, right? And it's just like, and I'm not trying to sound like manipulative here or whatever, but it's like, oh, this is a fit. I can feel it. I can see that they're motivated. And now it's like, oh, a deal. I have a deal, and I have the bills to pay, and I have this goal to meet in my business. So the next thing I always remind myself is, I don't need any one deal to make my business work. My business works because of an aggregate of things I'm doing. So when I start to get kind of wound up in a conversation, I remind myself, like, I don't need this one deal. And so here's what I'm getting at. What this does for me, Sharon, is this brings me back to my own authenticity. It brings me back to me not being worried about saying the exact right thing to them. And then I'm putting off a new vibe. And the vibe is, you can trust me. Like, this is who I am. I'm calm and relaxed, and let's work together. Now, within that, you'll also learn over time, kind of what phrases to use that help. But you really want to make sure that the energy you're giving off isn't an energy of, I can't lose this deal. And it's more of an energy of, this sounds like a fit. Let's really talk about how this can work for both of us. And just that whole energy, even the same words coming from those two different energies, to me, land so much differently for the people that I'm talking to. It used to be that I really felt like I needed these deals. Like I was in the beginning of my business, like I felt like I was a failure. I broke even on that rehab. I'm kind of using credit cards now. Like I'm in, and I just wanted the cash income. And I could tell that I was coming across as not pushy, but desperate.
That's right. Yeah. And that brings up another point. When you need a deal, and you really don't want to be in that position, when you need a deal, you start doing stupid things.
Yeah.
I used to call it eraser math, where you've got your numbers down, you know what you need to pay, but then you go, well, maybe the comps are actually a little bit better. I might get a little bit more, and I can shave some off of the rehab. And that is the very absolute worst place to put yourself in, because you don't make smart decisions. So that is a very valid point. You can't be in a position where you need a deal to move forward.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And, I love your idea of the eraser math. And, the term I kind of use is happy ears and happy eyes. Like, I start to all of a sudden I see things differently. Like, I'm so confident in this neighborhood. It's like,
yes.
What does how could my confidence be more reliable than MLS comps?
Exactly.
So yeah, and that comes with time and experience. And I love spreading this message, because I feel like this is just a very common phase for people to go through as they're getting into all of this. And the quicker you can get yourself out of it, the better. So yeah, so keep yourself in a position where you just don't need any one deal. And so then you're on the phone with someone. It's, hey, they sound motivated. It sounds like, they'd be someone that you'd want to work with. And when I say that, I mean, I don't want to work with every single seller I talk to. No. I don't want crazy drama. I want someone who I know is going to pick up that phone when I need something done 3 days before closing for paperwork. They're going to show up. They didn't cancel on me 3 times in a row. If they're canceling on my initial appointment, how do I know they're going to show up for closing when my buyer comes with that cashier's check?
Exactly.
So, so when things are starting to feel like a good fit, you just, again, for me, it's just really about being authentic. It's about, making sure that they understand I'm an investor. I'm absolutely here to make a profit. And I don't want to make a profit if it doesn't also work for you and help you meet your goals. So that brings me to get into their world. What do they want, and what do they think they need out of this? And just really be open to whatever they bring to the conversation, especially initially. Because initially, a lot of times sellers are going to bring things to the conversation that aren't really realistic for those of us who are experienced. Yeah. They're going to want a bunch of money and think that they're take, and think that they're giving you a good deal.
Mm-hmm.
So this is one thing that I've really learned to do over time is just really like not necessarily agree with what they're saying, but just validate that you understand where they're coming from. Mm-hmm. And that kind of creates a safe space for them to know that like, you're not going to be the one, I'm not showing up here to tell you, Mr. Seller or Mrs. Seller, that you're wrong. And I hear you. And so let me tell you the way I look at it based on my experience. And then you get to explain, where you're going to be coming from, what you think numbers look like, what kind of offer you think you're going to make. And oftentimes it's not a match right at first. Mm-hmm. Okay. And this has made me so much money. So the thing is, like, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a big number tracker. I get a feeling I've at least made as much money off of long-term follow-up as I have off of, initial deals, probably more.
Yeah.
So what you want to do is establish rapport. Nobody's wrong if you're not coming together on numbers. You just appreciate them and their time. If it's not a fit, you just make sure that you leave this door wide open for, I would really like to check in with you over time to see if anything changes on your end. Mm-hmm. And again, it just, you're kind of leaving them as a new friend and not as someone who schooled them or someone who kind of got frustrated when they couldn't see it your way. You're leaving them as someone that just says, I hear you. I understand what you're saying. Like, why don't we reconnect in 3 months? I'll see if anything's mm-hmm. changed in the market. You can see if anything's changed about your situation. Call me in the meantime.
Right. That's exactly what I do. You always want to leave the door open. And I like to tell people too, I hope your plan A works out. I'm rooting for you that it does. But if it doesn't, I would love to be your plan B. Now, when it comes to follow-up, I believe that as many as 80% of your deals can come from long-term follow-up. I really believe that. And that is a mistake I made in the beginning. If they said no to me, I thought it was no. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize that it was possibly not now. Mm-hmm. And that by having those conversations with them, and I do think there's a way, like you said, that you can lead into this big gap between what they want and what you are able to pay. Mm-hmm. You can say, well, I understand where you're coming from and where you think your value on the tax assessor site is this much. However, you need $30,000 worth of work. And they'll say, well, but I can get that vanity for $129 at Home Depot. And that's when I just dive in and very kindly tell them, I only use licensed contractors because it has to be able to pass inspection when my end buyer buys it. But I do a little bit of education with them. However, like you said, it's important for them to feel heard. They need a little time sometimes to understand your no and your reasoning behind your no. And that's where the follow-up is so, so valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. That conversation about, I could get this thing fixed up for X amount of dollars, like you, Sharon, I have, a go-to on that. It's just like, hey, I totally get it. And if that's the best course of action for you, absolutely, please go do it.
Yeah.
And I just won't approach this project that way. I do not swing my own hammer. If I did, it would be a disaster. Like, this is just not the way my business model is set up. And I understand that you believe you could do it in a different way. So it's just like you're staunchly standing in where you're at, and you're like also validating what they think. And then, Sharon, I can go sometimes, depends on the person, right? But I mean, this is a great litmus test too. I so kindly say to them, if that's the case, may I just ask you, like, why haven't you done it yet? And just kindly slip it in, just to see, like, because there's a reason, right?
Right, definitely.
Yeah, sometimes they logically answer with, well, I wanted to see like what someone like you would tell me. Okay, well, yeah, that makes perfect sense, or they can actually have a real moment where they sit and they really look at themselves and they say, I'm not going to fix this up. And it's, I kind of pride myself on being the one of the ones, or the one, or whoever, I don't know who else they're talking to, who can kindly and with love kind of say, are you really gonna?
Are you really going to do that? And do you really have the skills, the time, and do you have the money if this house takes 30,000 for a contractor to do it, do you even have whatever the material costs are? Do you realistically have 10,000, 15,000, whatever that money is to do it? And then do you have the skill to do it? And like you, I just tell them, do I look like I know how to use a hammer? I can hang a picture. That's about it. That's about it. But, I think they appreciate the honesty. And I think when you tell them, I only use professionals to do the job because my end buyer is going to want the same finished product that you and I want. And then, we want things to be done correctly, and that my end buyer wants the same thing. So I think it's a matter of just having these conversations, getting okay with telling them the truth, but in a certain way.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like I said, Sharon, like you're such a cheerleader for like women in real estate. And of course, like I'm all about women, men, whoever being successful. It's not a gender thing. But what I will say is that like women are kind of good at these conversations. And I know men who are too, but like, if you are a female out here listening to any of this and you wonder where your value might be, like it very well may be in these types of nurturing conversations. Because oftentimes women will, especially if we're interacting with men, we may come off as, like less, like, I don't want to say threatening, but just like, if we're coming across as less macho, then they have less ego to defend, right? Especially if you can if you're having like a private conversation with them, like when you're walking the house or something like that, and there's, no one else around, you can really be sort of that soft, sort of safe space creator, sort of landing space for them, as opposed to how they may feel with a male. And of course, none of this is like a hard and fast rule, but it's really, bringing this like softer side of myself into my business, I found really helped it as opposed to when I first started out, I was just trying to be more domineering. Doesn't mean I was totally domineering, but I was just trying to like sort of be one of the boys or whatever. And but it just, again, it came off as kind of phony because wasn't my real nature. And then when I noticed I started just getting more into my real nature, I just felt like that was actually like a real, like just a real great tool in my tool set that I thought would hold me back, and it didn't.
Yeah. Well, I think this has always been a male dominated field, and there was certainly so much to learn from the men, but it does excite me to see women in this field. And I happen to believe that women are uniquely qualified to have these conversations. And they come at the negotiation process with a little bit different viewpoint. You used it in your business. Moms negotiate with their kids all the time over bedtimes, and their kids have to still love them at the end of the day, even if they tell them the firm truth. But I do believe women are uniquely qualified. I believe they are uniquely qualified when it comes to probates, because they can just have these organic conversations, and it's all quite natural. So I love finding somebody that's as passionate about this as I am, because I think when you can change your mindset around sellers and talking to sellers, and when you can really truly just look at it as a conversation where you talk to the people as people, you decide what they want, what they need, what you can give them, and then try to meet in the middle and let everybody leave with dignity and leave the door open. This is another thing I'm big on from a branding perspective, is I have always sent a thank you note, even when I didn't get the deal. And I would pput my business card back in there, because I figured if they got mad at my offer, they probably threw it away the first time. So I still do that. I recommend just getting some nice thank you cards from Amazon, like embossed, nice quality cards, and then write a personal note. But here's what I do differently today too. I still send that note, but I send them a bonjour. So bonjour is that little app that you put on your computer in which you say something like, "Hey, Laura, thanks so much for showing me your house. I would really love to check back in a few months. I respect your decision that we couldn't come to an agreement today, but once again, I thank you. I'll check back with you in a bit." But getting that little video, bonjour, is a little bit different, and they have a free plan too. It shows up in their email with the video player rather than a YouTube link. It shows up with the little video player, but they totally don't expect that. And that's a way for you to get different in your marketplace and stand out, because from most of your competitors, because most of your competitors aren't going to do this 30-second thing. They're just not.
Yeah. Yeah, no, great point. And I remember you talking about Bonjoro when you were a guest on the Three Doors podcast.
Oh, yeah.
With Jim Manning and Caleb Davis. Yeah. That is not something I had seen it or heard about anyone else doing yet. I absolutely love that. Just even the thank you card thing would be, a change in my business that I would love to do. Yeah. So I wrote both of those things down. I remember when I heard you talk about Bonjoro the first time, I put it in my calendar to research. And
you can use it. You can use it for all sorts of things, Laura. You can use it to send it to the seller. Hey, give them a first heads up about who you are. This is Laura. I'm excited to come look at your property tomorrow. Just confirming the appointment, and I'll see you tomorrow at 1. Or it really just needs to be that simple. So always get their email address. So let me ask you one last thing here. If you were starting over today, kind of a final advice thing, but the question is, what would you do differently? Or we've all got those things we say, oh, gee, I wish I'd have done this, other than the deals we messed up. What a procedure, something is there something you would do differently today?
Yeah, this is such a great question. I could come up with 100 things.
No.
But so many of those things too, I just see the value of I needed to go through it. And I don't know. So I want to choose to answer this with something that I saw as an option back in. There's a lot of things I would have done differently that I didn't even understand as an option. But here's what I knew was an option that I didn't do. And this is what I would do differently. And this is really for everybody. I would get a coach sooner. I would get a coach immediately. Coaches have changed my personal and professional life.
Yeah.
And I spent the first 6 years not using them. And I mean, once I ponied up, and so not only get a coach, this is for anybody who's taking this advice seriously, don't just get one, do what they tell you to do. If you look, there are a lot of people that go out there and hire coaches and then don't do what the coach says, and they're like, this is a waste. Well, I'll tell you why it feels like a waste of money. It's because you're not doing what your coach, but get one. It's truly an investment. It's truly an investment that will pay off. My first coach paid for herself. The advice she gave me on week 1, I went out and I did it that day, the next day, whatever. And I did the math immediately. She paid for 55% of her fee by me following the advice she gave me. I earned that money in real time before the call on week 2. That's how powerful she was.
Coaching is the thing. I think for me, that's a big thing. People wait too long to get a coach. And I have a friend who's got a very successful 7-figure real estate investing business. He always has a couple of coaches. And one day I said to him, why did you hire this particular coach? He said, because I need to know this one particular thing. And this was like a $30,000, $40,000 investment. He said, if I can nail this one little piece in my business, I'll 10x that. And I don't need another thing from them in the year. But you have to be coachable. And you have to be not, but that won't, but I'm not. You've got to lose that phrase, and you've got to go into it with faith and do your due diligence on coaches. But 100%, you need to listen to what they say and be open-minded and then implement. Yeah.
I just find someone that you feel like like and trust. Ask around, if you don't know where to begin, if you don't have anyone in mind, ask around to people that you do know, like and trust. Who are they using as a coach? Really get the world of it from them to get a feeling of, is this someone? And then, most coaches, if not all of them, anybody legit should offer you some sort of consultation call or, some sort of like introduction to where, you can feel them out. They can feel you out. Is it going to work for both of you? But you said it, like I wrote it in bold in my notes here, in case this would come up today. You have to be coachable. It's not just about spending the money and hiring them. You have to be coachable. For me, my big thing is I need to be vulnerable with my coaches. Oftentimes I'll get on the call with my coaches and, this side of me that doesn't want to be vulnerable. Well, I'm good. Everything's good. Let's talk about all the great things that are happening.
Everything's sunny outside.
Yeah, exactly. And the great coach, usually pulls me out of that, which is exactly what I need. And that's what they're for. They're not, they're there to help you gain self-confidence, to be a cheerleader for you, but it won't feel like that every single second.
Mhm.
And that's how you know you're going into a growth phase, is you're leaving your comfort zone. So that's what I would do different, 100%. There was one more thing I wanted to say about this. Well, it's not coming to me. I don't want to hold it up, but yeah, I would get a coach a lot sooner. It's you know, what the story I was telling myself was, I need to have X amount in the bank before I go spend this much on coaches. I remember what I was going to say. But in any case, what happened was a bunch of years went by where I wasn't to this magic number I thought I needed. And, you know, the thing is, if I would have just hired the coach up front, I would have gotten to that goal within a fraction of the time. I see that so clearly now. So I'm just like your friend that, you know, I made a promise to myself. I'm never going to be without a coach. You know, I'll give myself a month or two if I'm in between something, but for the most part, I'm just never without a coach anymore. I totally look at it as an investment in my business that's every bit as important as a marketing investment. And, you know, one time your story about your friend who hired the one person for the one thing, you know, I even joined a mastermind at one point because of the other people who were in the mastermind.
Oh, yes, definitely.
It was the biggest payoff. I mean, I'm telling you, I am rocking with some of the most successful people in St. Louis right now. I'm in their cell phone, they're in mine. They answer my call. I'm doing a private money deal with one of them right now. And like this, I'm so excited about the future. But the thing is, I felt like what I wanted in my business was, I wanted the development this mastermind would offer me. But inside of that, now I was going to have some very successful people get to know who I was.
Yeah.
And that was so critical and valuable.
In your Rolodex. So you could call them in real time when something big came up or you needed an immediate answer. You didn't have to go to Google or try to figure it out. That is invaluable. And I too have been part of a mastermind, a pretty high level mastermind for several years. And it's the people. That's the reason you're there. It's for the people. So, well, Laura, this has been a great show. What's the best way for folks to get in touch with you?
Oh, gosh. Yeah. I mean, well, if you just, you know, you can find me on Facebook, Laura Lenington. And then I think I gave you a website, Sharon. I can put that in the show notes.
I'll put that in the show notes.
Great. Yep. So there's a link where you can learn more about me on my website. There's contact information there. There's a bio there. You know, ways to reach out to me if you've got, you know, deals or questions. There's all that information there for how to get a hold of me.
Great. Well, thanks again, Laura, and thanks to all the listeners who came out today, and they come out week after week. If you would, please share the show and leave us a rating and a review over on iTunes. I would really appreciate it. And in the meantime, I will see you same time, same place next week. Bye for now.